Um, Good day, everyone. Welcome to our knowledge transfer seminar. And my name is Ash Ravi Kumar. I am the Entrepreneurship Development Officer within CERN Knowledge Transfer Group. Our mandate is to twofolds. One, look at startups that can use CERN technology and go to market faster, and then create more startups from CERN. So that's what we work on. One of the key things for me is to look at our alumni who've gone and looked and created startups. Um, and I'm always grateful for people who come back and give time. And KT Seminar is one which has been running for 5 years now, where experts have graciously donated their time to come and talk back to us. So with that, I would like to say thank you, Tomas Sluka, founder and CEO of CREAL. I'm still going to call it CREAL. Thomas, although you told me it is the other way around. I'm a huge fan of light field cameras. I bought one of those light rope things a long time back, but it was one of the most bulkiest light field cameras ever. But you're working on really awesome stuff, and I want to hear more about your journey, how you started from CERN, your journey towards finding the startup, founding it, and where you are now. So with that, I'm pleased to introduce our speaker today, founder and CEO of CREAL, Tomas Sluka. The floor is yours, Mike. Whenever you want to share your screen, we look forward to hearing you talk.
Yeah, thank you, Ash, for the introduction. At least I really realized that I prepared, let's say, the slides appropriate to what you introduced, that it will be a lot about the journey, how to make a startup, not so much about like what a startup is about. So I am really pleased to have the opportunity to tell you a story of how a company can be created by someone who did a research whole life before, which I assume is the case of most of the people in the audience here. And if not, I guess it may be relevant. Anyway, so the research was me. So I spent also 2 years at CERN, and only later, 8 years later, started the company. The main message of what I want to share is basically that company can be created from scratch, even when it is not the core of what you were doing in your career before. Really, it should be mostly about solving some real problems rather than taking some toy and finding how it can be applied. And I split the presentation in 3 parts. So first, I will very lightly introduce what our startup is doing. That's basically the polished picture which external world sees. And then I will spend, let's say, the second third on how it looked from my perspective, what were the challenges, which is much more dirty and less straightforward way of doing things, or less clean than the external picture, and possibly some takeaways at the end, which I think everybody hears, but usually underestimates kind of the importance of that. There are lectures, I think everywhere today, stressing this is important, and you just say, okay, it's not so important. So I will share my screen. Here. You should see an orange slide.
Yes, we do.
So I'm pleased to introduce you to CREAL, or CREAL, which really means to see real. We are now 3.5 years old startup based in Lausanne. We are currently 20 people, and large part of the team are veterans from augmented reality projects at Intel and Magic Leap. And we have also board consisting of super experienced entrepreneurs, which grew companies from scratch to up to $1.5 billion in their past. We built this mighty force to bring the natural display to the augmented reality. So first, why we should do that? Well, augmented reality is the gigantic promise to become our everyday tool in everything from cooking to neurosurgery, possibly within this decade, and the main communication platform in the future. Just imagine that we could see all the digital information in the same way we see the real world. It's basically inevitable because this is the natural way we consume information. And indeed, the whole ecosystem is evolving in this direction quite predictably. So billions of dollars are poured into the trend. But the display technology needs revolution. And here is why. What we would like to experience in AR is something like this: vibrant and crisp digital images in our own hands. But what we get instead today from all devices we can buy is a blurred potato. And this is not a problem of too low resolution displays or bad optics. This is a problem of fundamentally wrong way of displaying 3D imagery. Because practically all devices we can try today display just optically flat images in a fixed focal distance. Two images provide the illusion of depth due to our stereoscopic vision, but each one eye sees a flat image, and that's not natural for us. We can experience the problem with a small test. If you try it with me, you will see the problem. So if you close one eye and look at this text over your hand, like this, you can try to see the text hovering at the tip of your fingers. But when you actually focus at the hand, you won't see the text because it's out of focus, it's blurred. And this is a massive problem for augmented reality. And it's extremely strong. The effect is strong within the arm's reach in our personal space when the AR interaction will be important or is important. That's why we at CREAL developed the so-called light field display, which creates imagery that is genuine representation of how light exists in the real world. You can really focus close or far and see the things correctly, like in this video. I hope you will see it. This is our promo visualization of how augmented reality should look like and what light field makes possible. So pay attention to the focus. When you focus far, the close objects are blurred and vice versa. So, and this is what you cannot buy today. Simply, the technology is not yet there. And in last 3 years, we converted very primitive prototypes, which I will show, into a first product, but it's not like end user product, it's technology demonstrator and development kit. It's bulky, not very fashionable, but it shows yet unprecedented type of augmented reality image. So here I'm showing entirely authentic footage, which was taken by a Sony camera sitting behind the glass. Again, pay attention to the focus. Now it is far, the hand is blurred, and the dragon as well. But when the camera focuses at the hand, the dragon gets in focus. And this is the effect which we are selling and which you cannot buy anywhere else. So again, now you see the focus back on the sofa. So in case the video was too compressed or choppy, here are still photos of slightly different scene. Again, entirely authentic photo taken through the lens. So now the focus is on the hand. That's why the first planet and the text are in focus and the rest is blurred. And you can change focus farther on the second planet or on the last planet or sun and the plant. So again, this focus change is the value which we are offering. And we are not yet at the end. We are currently scaling down the projection engine to the form factor of kind of classical glasses. We don't want to be the smallest glasses on the market, but we want to provide, let's say, the most immersive type of image in reasonably small glasses. We have around 1.5 years to get there. So I'm looking forward to it. So this is, let's say, the polished picture of the startup from what you see from outside. And now I would like to tell you what was kind of the road to that point. So as I mentioned, I was a researcher until the age of 36. So I studied PhD in small provincial university in Czech Republic, Technical University of Liberec. Then I spent in mechatronics. I spent short time in Japan, and then I became a member of Academy of Sciences in Prague, the Atlas Pixel group. So I went to CERN and was working there next 2 years in the last 2 years before first collisions. So I was one of the guys which was first year every day in the pit, testing, debugging all the installations, and the second year contributing to the detector control system. That was amazing experience, how technology of such a massive device can be built by a group of people with screwdrivers. And when the detector and LHC was finished and ready for experiments, I moved to Lausanne for a postdoc to a material science laboratory where I spent almost 8 years and touched really wide range of projects, including making a 20 nanometers big device, which I designed and built with an e-beam lithography. That's where the photo is from. And also produced, let's say, reasonably good results to continue in academic career. But when I saw what it is about, tenure track and professorship, I realized I would have to abandon all the hands-on playing with the hardware and software, which I really didn't want. I was collecting ideas for that time, almost 12 or 13 years, and there was one which survived the scrutiny of time. So in around 2014, the virtual reality is coming as one of the big new promises of entirely new experiences, and I was absolutely eager about it. But what came instead was a big disappointment. The experience was very unpleasant and not really immersive. And I knew what's the problem for me. The problem was that there is no focal depth. The eyes are not behaving normally, which makes you feel poisoned in some way. And this problem is not really solved until today. So that was around 2014. I was still doing the postdoc. And I had a problem which I really wished was solved. I was not initially considering to solve it by myself, but I started looking who is really working on the solution in patents and published papers and in the news. But I didn't see any practical solution. It was either too complicated to build and make it good, or the performance was very poor. And there was a moment I still remember until today, after maybe 6 months of modeling and testing, when I got an idea which seemed to be super practical. You can build it and it should deliver the performance. So that was the eureka moment for me. And then I really started building prototypes in the evenings and weekends, and they actually worked well. So I quit the job, or my contract actually expired, and I didn't push on pursuing it further, and applied paid for a patent at that moment. So this was the, let's say, the setup. Around 4 square meters workshop at my home, small prototype, which looked like this, and which was showing something which you couldn't see anywhere else. So here you see the green images, which the eye or camera sees inside this eyepiece. So image where you can focus closer, let's say 20 centimeters, and see this, or focus farther and see something else without any eye tracking or feedback. The depth is already present in the image. So this is what I had. And let's say, okay, I really like the hobby, but I need to make a living out of it as well. And okay, I thought I may be 50% done. Some prototype which works, patent, and so on. I was wrong. The execution is 99.99% from the idea. And that's where I had to start it. So I had no idea basically how to start, no business background, no business training, and not really big network among entrepreneurs, apart from few colleagues which started startups earlier than me. But anyway, I knew what you need is to have a demo, ideally patent, but these two things are optional, but it's really good to have them. And then some slides to present not the technology, but the business case. So you can find it on the internet. There are basically 7 or 8 standard items, which the so-called pitch in 10 minutes should include. And this is what I prepared. The business-wise, it was horrible. It was extremely abstract, but at least I tried to make it very nice, like a form of it, and also present it fluently. And at the time, it was probably okay because people, especially related, at EPFL, which were converting researchers into entrepreneurs, are used to it, that there is basically very little of business experience behind. So this was the material I had in hands, and then I had no idea where to go with it. So the first, I just ask around where to go. And the first is, of course, to go to some institutions in the local ecosystem or ask startups. At EPFL, it is, of course, the Innovation Park. At CERN, I think it's a Technology Transfer Office, or in Geneva, it's a Fongit, and so on. But I mean, from my side, it would be enough to say the first starting point. I simply wrote an email to, head of, I forgot even ahead of which branch, but at Innovation Park, and the reply was, "Come tomorrow, bring what you have." So I spent the night by making the prototype portable and really working well. Came with my slides, and then it was basically as if they grabbed my hand and tsunami took me over. So one thing is, I mean, very good to say right now, there is a big hunger for people which are willing to try. It doesn't matter almost how bad or good is the idea or project. It's just the willingness to try to pursue this career to make a startup. So at EPFL, I was introduced then to the private companies, Venture Lab, which is a whole Switzerland activity. They provide trainings, so like evening trainings every week, 4 hours in some evenings on entrepreneurship, which I started visiting, and also applied for a startup competition. So since the first contact, it was very rapid. We received the grant. I even don't remember the process of application. I remember it was very easy to get the money to continue. We won first prizes. Are basically prizes for stand-up show because you are showing only the slides. And before the end of year, I mean, first time we appeared somewhere online that we were winners of some prizes. We were contacted by Apple, Samsung, and similar companies. What do you have, guys? And very quickly, I flew to London, and we get the first project paid at the time by Samsung, 60,000. So you could show some people are interested to pay for what you are doing, even though the delivery is just kind of next prototype. And we needed to collect the feedback, which meant, again, to pack the prototype and some presentation. Here, go to Logitech, go to Intel, which was here at the time, show them the demo, and simply see whether they tell us, okay, that's a nonsense, or no one is interested in that, or we have it. No, they were super enthusiastic about what we were showing. And well, it just gives you the confidence to continue. Then it also meant to, pack the stuff and go to US first to Consumers Electronics Show, not as exhibitors, but as visitors. But anyway, we managed to meet a technology scout, high-ranking, including some high-ranking managers at the usual suspect companies, and opinion leaders in casinos, in hotel lobbies, and so on. And after one of the meetings, we were introduced to business developer, which contacted us to basically all companies in Silicon Valley. And we made a 1-week road trip visiting Apple, Facebook, Microsoft, Google, and so on, and basically collected the feedback, what they think about what we have. And you just get the feeling, yeah, this is something they are interested in and don't have it. And yeah, this is what the prototype was showing at the time. You look inside and you see the image where you can really focus. Now at the snake, then change focus at the hand, change focus at the Mario. And again, this is not kind of computer generated blur and focus. This is really natural focus happening in your eye, or in this case, in the camera. But it was green and kind of impractical, ugly loop. So, so this was the basic process, but one type of activity was even more dominant, and that was the pitching, the presentation of the business case on all possible events I could see. You find the contacts online, or you are really recommended to go somewhere. So you do almost every 2 weeks, or even multiple times per week, some presentations to investors. They talk to you. There is no follow-up. Then you meet them second time, third time, fourth time. People are talking about you. And after around 7 months, the first investor came and said, I'm interested to invest, and sign the term sheet. The term sheet is a document describing basic conditions of investment, but it's not legally binding, so everybody can trash it. But anyway, it works like a snowball, so new investors come right after that. So the term sheet is super important to kind of reach. And around this time, we incorporated the company. Actually, the basic capital was provided by my former professor, the boss at the EPFL. And also my colleague took a cantonal loan, kind of very crude loan, offered to startups with his personal guarantee. So if there is a problem, he would have to pay half of it at least back. We became also winners of the Venture Leaders program, which is also for whole Switzerland, and everybody can join it. And it was, again, super interesting because you are selected with 10 or 9 other startups to go to Silicon Valley and news write about 10 best technology startups in Switzerland, while our startup was still 4 square meters workshop at my home. And multiple of these startups actually have over 100 employees, and some were already acquired by, at least one was acquired by Apple since then. So after this kind of proofs of interest, of business interest, and proof of the technology that people are interested in having it in the future, we managed to close the round. So around 850,000 francs in mid of 2018. So again, when you follow the arrow, which I showed on the previous slide, it took around 1 year or more than 1 year from kind of the first presentation of first investor event until we got the money and could continue. It was a delayed compared to the plans, like actually almost everything is normally delayed in the startup life, but we had 6 months to deliver on our promises. And the promise was not to show the green image, but maximum quality which our technology can deliver. So the high quality light field. We were super lucky that around the same time, Intel, which was developing smart glasses here at EPFL with 30 people, laid off the entire team, and some of the best engineers I met in my life joined us. And in 6 months, it was super tight because the people are coming gradually, we didn't have a space and so on. We built a prototype which looked around like this and started working really like 31st December of 2018. I still remember that we had an optics table with some equipment on it, but needed to transport it and hide it. So I found this black sheet and Velcro and some chewing gum scotch tapes to glue it together. We packed it to the suitcases and went as exhibitors at the Consumers Electronics Show in Las Vegas in January, at the beginning of January. The Swiss pavilion was in the very corner of the exhibition hall, and we were in the very corner of the Swiss pavilion, which looked like this, our exhibition booth. But nevertheless, a couple of technology scouts passed by and journalists passed by, in fact, searching for someone else, looked inside the prototype and saw something like this. Again, pay attention to the change of focus. So now it is coming from the branch to the shoulder of the frog, to the face of the frog. And this behavior is, again, happening only in the camera or in the eye of someone who is looking inside. So the focal depth is real. It's not computer generated. So now the focus will go to the branches far. And I'm still confident to say that this was the best light field image at the time, because you even didn't see the pixels themselves. It was enough high resolution to satisfy the eye fully. And it is still the best light field image today. Again, in case the video was choppy or compressed, here is a still photo, focus at the face of the frog. In fact, if you were changing smoothly, it will go again on the shoulder and back and focus at the branches behind. So the people which saw this prototype, first journalist wrote about us. One of the most commented and shared articles, at least in this journal, on virtual reality from CES, where there are 4,000 companies and 180,000 visitors, professional visitors, that what we showed is unlike anything in AR or VR headsets on the market today. And from the first meeting with the technology scout from several companies, we were talking to CEOs and presidents of multi-billion-dollar companies in the industry. So we were lucky that we were not doing something they already have. They simply don't have it. And so the year after, 2019, we started really traveling with the prototypes. We got investment offers. We sold first prototypes. And at the end, we closed 7 million funding round, which allowed us to really continue to scale down the technology farther and farther. And last year was unfortunately pandemics, but we had enough money, and the pandemics actually boosted the projections of the augmented reality market, because all communication suddenly moved online. It was not live anymore. And augmented and virtual reality are promised to be better ways of communication. So a lot of money flew into this domain, and we were part of that trend. And at the same time, the biggest name in augmented reality at the time, the Magic Leap, which had again the team in Lausanne, laid off their entire team, and we were able to hire again veterans from the industry with additional $6.5 million. So today we are 20 people. We are ranked among top 10 best Swiss startups. That is a ranking for less than 5 years old startups in Switzerland. We raised $16 million so far. We have first revenues around 700,000. We have pretty big space, 200 square meters, holography lab, and so on, and mainly super strong team with 7 years of experience in augmented reality. So this was basically the journey from having nothing up to having a company which provides technology that is needed in a very valuable market. And okay, I was a little bit faster. I have the last part where I wanted to summarize a few points which I wish I valued more at the beginning. So as I mentioned, there are always these entrepreneurial courses where people tell you what is important and you kind of neglect it. So first thing I recommend that when you go to such a course and someone says this is important, just believe that. Just take it as a granted. And these few slides I actually prepared for high school kids in Tanzania and Israel. So it's very lightweight. So I hope it will tell the message. So first thing I would like to say is that each startup is different, and what I presented should not be considered as an example. Simply, there are very different startups from software up to biotech or medtech. One doesn't need much investment, another needs kind of a lot of money, and then there is only binary output. A lot of money are gained or everything is lost. And hardware startup is somewhere kind of closer to the biotech. You need a lot of initial money, but you have also high potential. But the different means something more than just, startups are different. Different should be essential feature of the startup. You want to be different than basically any other company that exists. Well, the reason is that it doesn't make sense to enter established competition. So imagine there are companies which are doing their stuff already a long time, just cannot compete with them. And it doesn't make sense even for them almost because they are competing for the same medal, which means they have to reduce the margins and basically the returns are very low. So one way, of course, to enter business is to be many times better, something like a Google. But this is also an exception. So there are other ways. Simply do stuff which no one else is doing and avoid competition by being unique. So it's more like inventing a new game or new sport, simply which didn't exist before. So in industry, let's take an example of smartphones. It means not to make just another smartphone, but to make, for example, a smartphone for blind people or display for blind people, which can be plugged to existing smartphones. Or to make something different, which is partly serving the same purpose, but is like a different tool, something like smartphones are hammers and smart glasses are like screwdrivers. You need them for different tasks. And indeed, these glasses were made by a startup, Canadian startup North, even though it was so far rather a failure. They were bought by Google by $180 million, but the investment was $150 million. So it's not really a big success at the end. Anyway, there are many who are trying to provide something of that kind, including us, in fact. And as I mentioned, startups are different. And I was speaking about something which is called today a deep tech startup. The names are appearing almost every year, but in this case, I'm speaking about something where the distance between you and your vision is very big. So by far, farther than your own resources can reach. So we can reach maximally some toy, like a simple prototype, but not to get farther. So one of the examples is, of course, something like really making a rocket, like a SpaceX. There is almost no stepping stone in between, but you try to, of course, invent some. So the deep tech startups are capital intensive. They need a lot of money and are at the same time very risky. It sounds like absolutely crazy combination. So how could you convince anybody to invest into that? Well, by offering the exceptionally high returns, which innovation really does, because innovation is sometimes able to beat established companies or be sold to established companies. So what startup actually offers, so why the high risk and high potential should be interesting. So if you say it's a lottery, if I tell you I'm giving you 5% chance to gain $100 million, but at the same time 95% chance to lose $1 million, you will probably not go into it unless the $1 million means nothing for you. But if you do this bet 100 times, then it is actually a very good option because the gain is practically guaranteed at certain moment. And this is, of course, what the big funds and wealthy investors do. Invest into very high risk, high potential startups, and many of them, and some of them make the returns, others make the losses. But the lottery is not a real lottery, it's a positive sum game. There is a gain. And yeah, one more thing I would like to say. You can draft the plan from scratch to very big vision, and with some stepping stones, ideally, or even without them, because there is only one thing you can be sure about, that the plan will not really work. So what is more important is to have rather an algorithm, how to behave when this situation comes. And the plan is really important to have, to present it, very linear plan, but you need to be prepared for the reality, which will be completely different. So first, the path will be different. There will be a lot of obstacles on the way. And at the end, you will very probably realize that the target is not where you thought it is, but is somewhere else. So you need to deviate, pivot, or search for a different target. And this was practically guaranteed for practically all startups. So I'm saying it because the vision or the goal should be your passion. It should be something which you are really interested in, because the chances to get money out of it is relatively small. And it's of course really the chances are even lower if you don't like the goal, or if you do it only for money, you will give up. So it should be something where you are really convinced that you don't want to give up. You want to make it happen. And well, one more thing is probably important, and not necessarily to say, but making a startup needs also some personal traits. So I listed few, which I, of course, found in the literature, but I agree with that. Very important is to be able to persuade people, and very honestly. That's the best way to persuade people. And the ability to present, especially at the beginning, it's important just to be able to present. And of course, the ability to work hard and never give up. And of course, the entrepreneur should be also very friendly person in some way. And one more thing is important. So it's probably not possible to come just out of nowhere. It's important to have a proven skills and good reputation, because the investors invest in the people. As I mentioned, the plan will probably not work, and what will remain in the startup are the people. So the investors, especially in our, or at least in our case, I guess in all cases, are simply calling to your former colleagues, to your former bosses about who you are. And this is extremely important. And I left it at the end, but the most important thing to know is that startup is a group of people. You can start alone, but at the end, you will be 5%, you will be 3% of the company, and you need the great people around. And it is also very kind of emotional and roller coaster type of adventure. So it's very much like a family, and you really need to care about the personal fit between the people. So the attitude is actually more important than the qualification. And in fact, the cohesive team of average players is better than having some superstars, which are impossible to work with. It's also important to keep in mind that most startups actually fail because of people. You give up, or there is some internal conflict, and so on. So the building a great cohesive team is extremely important, probably the most important thing. So I advise to choose people carefully, but then be generous. You want to really split the company, give a share, because vast majority of work is ahead of everyone. Whenever you think most was done, we are probably still at the beginning. And okay, I will maybe try to get very quickly through a few hints which I thought are important, or how to get the right idea. There were whole books written about, how to make the idea, how to think and look at the world to build an innovative idea. But I really think, okay, first, for especially researchers, it's important message. Don't do complicated stuff just because you know how to do it. It's the type of startup where you have some toy and you don't know how it could actually make some application or be useful in the future. It's really better to do it vice versa. You have a problem which personally bothers you. You even don't know how to solve it, but you start working on the solution. So when I made the title and abstract for this presentation, I started with how the experience with technologies was the basic stone for the confidence to simply start doing something which you like, or I liked at the time, just applied the skills. And it's also important to simply work on the solution which requires, let's say, 5% of the skill, because there is a lot of work around, other work around. One way of, at least my way of thinking about, how innovation can be created is to think about the future and extrapolate from the history. And in our case, it was extrapolation of the communication technologies. The first step was, well, we can be sure that the smartphone is not the last communication device. It would be the same, like to think it about the telephone or telegraph in the past. There will be new communication devices. And what it will be, well, there is a wide variety of that, right? All the Neuralinks and or the augmented reality and similar. And one way of thinking which helped, especially me, without business or economy background, was to think about the economy or the world in general as about the thermodynamic system. What we are doing is actually searching for energy sources. We harvest the energies or conserve energies for our benefit and for our survival. We simply create levers for our muscles and so on. So there is some source of energies which we can use. And the second part is to deploy them efficiently. And this is all about designing the tools and about information technology. So the information technology is actually the main tool which makes us people and which allowed us to exploit the energies much more efficiently than any other animal. And that's why I became convinced that augmented reality will become a much more efficient way of communication, which will allow us to design better tools, to distribute the energy better, to distribute food better without waste and so on. And that it will be one of the most important tools which people have, like smartphones today. And one more rather practical advice is to mind the trends which are happening around, because the investors are also a little bit following the trends, or a lot following the trends. So each time the new technologies appear, there are obviously some ideas which no one yet had, and they will create new businesses, new applications, and generate new money. So of course, from history, it was all the steam engines, telegraph, telephone, and so on. Recently, silicon chips, internet, and so on. Each time it created new businesses where people invest. And today it's more like a blockchain, not anymore artificial intelligence, AR, drones, and so on. And it also depends where you are doing the startup. It may be different in US, in UK, in France, or in China. Switzerland has also its popular topics like fintech, cybersecurity, IT, biotech, and so on. But mostly everything with high added value. And yeah, I would like to close what I was telling with main message that making a startup is hard, is harder than I thought at the beginning, but it's also more satisfying than I thought. So it's a great way of life. And at the end, there is not bigger a personal risk than in other jobs. It's simply covered in some way. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thomas, thank you so much. And initially you said you would not want to do the third part. I'm so glad you did that too. And I think that was honest, frank, and lot of truth bombs. So thank you. Really, really pleased. There are a few questions, and I've got a few more that I've written, but I'll go with the questions because I don't want it to be a conversation. I don't want to eat all the time. So Peter asked a few questions. Can you tell us the general principle of how the focus works in the CREAL glasses?
Yes. I will not share any more kind of the pictures and try to do it verbally, but we basically create an array of viewpoints. So you can imagine that we are projecting slightly different image, if you see my face, to different parts of the eye through kind of array of pinholes. So each of these images creates basically always in focus image on your retina, but all of them create image which depends on your focus. So it's a real light field is continuous. So different information is entering the eye in the different places. But discrete light field is entering just finite number of viewpoints into your eye. And we do it with very fast sequential modulator. So we bombard the eye with 6 kilohertz, 6,000 images per second of low color resolution images, each one entering through slightly different pinhole, and they all together create the light field. So that's actually not kind of conceptually entirely new. It's more like the way of realization how we do it. Because the classical way is, for example, to use the display and put the micro lenses on it, which do more or less the same, but with extremely bad trade-offs. What we do is we create through finite or small number of viewpoints, very high resolution images, which each of them has a very poor color quality, which sums up in the eye. So it's extremely efficient at the end. I hope it answered the question, but we have on our YouTube some explanatory videos, including 20-minute talk, which you can watch. And
Awesome. Thank you. Couple of questions from Han. I'll go with the first one. Fantastic journey. Congrats. More VR, AR headsets are getting eye tracking capability. Is this an opportunity or threat for your business?
I would say more like a threat because, I mean, it can work. I would call it an engineering solution. You need to have very reliable and good eye tracking, but it's not all. Then you need to have some, agile optics, which is really shifting the focus of the flat image and then digitally generates the blur. So it may work somehow. I haven't tried any of such solutions. For example, Facebook is working on it, but quite a long time, which is a certain sign. But I don't think it is a long-term solution. Lightfield simply works well and doesn't need to risk any of these tricks.
Mhm.
And there are also depth cues which are very difficult to do with eye tracking. For example, this very fast movement of the eyes is creating so-called ocular parallax, like looking a little bit around the close object, which is very difficult to generate quickly based on eye tracking. So yeah, we don't need eye tracking, but also would be good, for example, the foveate image to kind of provide only
Another
the
one from Han as well. Thank you. So how much of, excuse me, how much of your time today do you spend on addressing technology issues versus finance, business issues, and team issues?
Yeah, I would say I mentioned that I really wanted to do the hands-on work on hardware, which I did still, I would say last year. I was building several prototypes, really finishing them. But last year, I really basically only guide the technical team. So you can imagine we have every day some discussions and so on. I'm responsible for few technological parts, really in contact with the suppliers. But yeah, it's less and less and less. And it's true that this is what I didn't want to say to those people which are interested in continuing doing the hardware. But you can remain the CTO and so on. I could probably switch to that.
So I guess for me, there was a related question to that was, how did you figure out what to delegate? How did you work on the delegation mechanism within your team?
Yeah, yeah. This is maybe one thing which I didn't stress enough. because I don't have really a business background and I'm almost retarded on in all the legal and finances stuff, of course I needed to find people which are pretty good in that or at least willing to do that. So it was extremely important to find the skills which I don't have.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's super important. So yeah, we have a little bit fluid rules. So I would say I'm the CEO, but still doing a lot of the technical stuff. Our CTO is involved a lot in the legal stuff and operations and finances and business development. Everybody has a multiple roles, and the rest of the team is mostly technical, really.
Awesome. Another question from Peter. Do you have a favorite book or books on entrepreneurship? Which one would you recommend? Which one did you get most value from?
Yes, I read. This is maybe one thing I should have mentioned. There are books which I wished I read earlier, and some I consider pretty completely useless. There are books about like how to get the innovative idea or how to shape the ideas. I simply said, okay, we already have the idea. I don't need that. If I should name one book, then it's really the Zero to One by Peter Thiel. Yeah,
Yep.
I think I also, of course, used some of these messages. But there is a strong message. The main one is avoid competition.
Mhm. Absolutely. And so, for people who are interested, last year, I was asked, what do you want to do with some money left for entrepreneurship team? I bought 10 copies of Zero to One, and we have it. And so I actually have only one left in my office that I've given to people to saying, read this. If anything that you want to read, this is what you want to read on Zero to One. So thank you.
Yeah, I agree. It was kind of, I would say, by far the one which most got my attention.
Yeah, so I've probably gone to that book a few times after it as well to saying, I remember reading something there, which was, a lot of triggers. So, so I've got no more questions from the thing. So I'll ask questions till people ask. Please type in the questions, and I'll ask Thomas. So, first question for me was, did anybody say this will never work?
I wouldn't say people they said this will never work, like from the technical point of view,
Mhm.
but there are many people which said I will be never wearing any smart glasses or anything like that. This is a dead. Well,
Mhm.
many people which thought this will never happen.
Mhm.
And from today's point of view, when you see that Apple is spending probably multiple billions of dollars, Facebook has 6,000 people working on VR. There was a $5 billion spent by Microsoft on HoloLens, $3 billion spent on by
Oh.
Magic Leap. It's kind of proof that this money would not be just burned; they are invested.
Mhm.
So there is a value in the future. But 4 years ago, people no glasses. It's just a gadget which no one will need.
Mhm.
Now people understand. So it was different, yeah. And people told you this will never work. And if when you read the histories of many other companies, including Google, people are avoiding them. It's a nonsense. So probably if you don't face such skepticism, you probably do something wrong as well.
Yes, absolutely. I guess, when you said Google, for me, the Google story was also interesting because I see a lot of correlation for you. Because when Google was growing, there was a lot of massive layoffs, and they got the best teams from Yahoo, and everybody joined them. When Silicon Valley was firing people, they were going for offsites. And I think you also had those seminal moments with Intel's lab closing up and Magic Leap firing, that you got the best talent. Otherwise, you would have been competing for the same talent with those folks too, with big pockets.
Without them, it would be super difficult.
Yeah.
It's more difficult than I thought, but
And
you
fortune favors the brave.
yeah, but it's not only the experience, it's also the attitude. Like the people with the amazing attitude and skill all both together.
Awesome. There was another question which says, what message or advice could you give to young Thomas when he was starting out to be an entrepreneur?
I would, well, okay, first thing I should maybe say right now is I would repeat what I was doing. So
Mhm.
collecting the skills and knowledge, technological knowledge, quite long time. But before the entrepreneurship, I would say, yeah, try to find your interest in that because I didn't like the economy and business. I saw it as something evil somehow. But then even some books just led me to the fact, okay, the economy is actually a thermodynamic system. There are inputs, there are outputs. Money is actually equivalent of energy in some way. You can transfer them. And this really gave me the understanding that works like that. And the business is actually doing good things. If you make tools which are useful, you are improving the life of people.
Mhm.
And yeah, so maybe I would give myself the advice, look at the world in this way, a bit
Mhm.
more.
Awesome. Another question, which is more in saying, in which fields can we use AR? Or if I flip the question also to add a little bit more, as like, where is your first go-to markets that you think are your immediate markets where you'll have impact and future that you think that AR and mixed reality will catch up to?
Yeah, in fact, where we solve the devices is optometric applications.
Mhm.
So because the light field can form the kind of genuine light, we can also transform the light. So we can simulate the lenses, we can simulate the corrections and so on. So here is where we solve few devices because this is cost insensitive market. It can be pretty expensive, it can be big, and it doesn't need very rich content and doesn't need really content platform. So that was the first target. Second is training. Actually, we did something for remote robotics. We already sold the one headset there. And then, of course, the big interest it's a training a lot, medical training. Then it is a remote assistance. So you can have someone less skilled with remote advice or documentation when you are building a device. And certainly it could be amazing, right? It's a
Mhm.
very complex device and needed navigation already in the detector. But this is really only the beginning. And the far vision is that everyone has the smart glasses. They are light and they provide everything you need. Many people see this as a science fiction, but if you look at you know uh, all the features of head-mounted display, first you know where the eyes are.
Mhm.
Eyes are terrible image sensor. I
Mhm.
mean, just test your vision. You can read only like this coin size in front of you. So when the device is on the eyes, you can provide much less information to generate really high quality sensation. And also most of the light goes to the eye. So it's also efficient in this way. Smartphone shines everywhere,
Mhm.
right? And you spend most of the energy on that. So it's not impossible that the smart glasses will really provide everything we need, but there is some way to go. And of course, this will be made by Apple and similar, but we provide, technology which may help it.
Mhm.
And that's
Brilliant.
actually the business case. We are selling the technology, not the hardware.
So there was a comment, and my next question is based on the comment because the comment is the thermodynamic metaphor is brilliant, right? So you kind of use the metaphor, A, you're a mechanical engineer and you're speaking to a technical audience as well. So that metaphor was brilliant on thermodynamics, right? So my question is, you're really good at pitching. You've worked your pitch, and I'm sure if somebody woke you up in the middle of the night, you can go with your pitch, no doubt. Did it come natural? Did you practice? How did you get skilled, work on your skill sets on pitches? Who helped? How did you go about
Yes. Well, I think it started when I was doing something like preparing for my master defense, and I did a totally horrible presentation without preparation. And then I completely flipped and put probably much more energy than anybody else into making the presentation. Just the form of that, like making it very simple, very light, that really people get the information. It mustn't be busy, it must be absorbable. And this I did already very early and noticed that it works.
it?
So already actually in the research career, I really paid a lot of attention to presenting well. When I thought it's simple, I tried to simplify it more and more and more, and basically really to speak like to kids.
Hmm.
And then it works much better. So I got a training during the research career, and I would say it was one of the elements. I said, okay, I have quite proven skill in presenting, and it's useful. It's very useful to start a startup.
Hmm. Oh, brilliant. It's another question from Alex as well. How did you build your team? Was it some friends or people you found down the road? Um, for me, it was more, adding to that is, who was your first believer? So you built your prototype, and then I'm sure, assuming you did it alone, or did you have folks to saying, okay, I've done this. Who was the first believer that you convinced on your first team member?
Yes, I had a okay. Maybe first thing I should say that I started it when I was 36. When all your colleagues have families and established jobs, which is kind of not so good. That's why all the most successful companies are made by very young people because there are many who tried.
Mhm.
Later, less and less people try. But statistically, the most successful entrepreneurs are between the age of 30 and 40. Uh, but I would say also in academic career, it's pretty good because academic career is also very unstable. Until you have a professorship or something like that, you never know what will be next year or things like that. So that's maybe a good field to, or good place to start the company. So yeah, I was building it more or less alone. And you are right, it was a little bit difficult to get the help because everybody had a job. Couldn't really leave it, right? Need to feed the family and yourself. But I got okay. First person was actually unemployed by the time, finished some contract and was free. Brilliant engineer. So we started together. He abandoned, by the way. Uh, and then my professor didn't really help kind of physically, but put the initial money. So she was a big believer. Uh, Maybe not into the project, but I worked for her and she said she knew that I can make things happen. And then my colleagues, and also my former colleague from CERN, also Tomas, was actually, I think, the first person who even offered to invest some money and is now our core co-founder.
All right, brilliant. Um, so this is an important question, and next one is, how do you know who to ask for money, where to apply for grants to develop your business?
Yes, well, I will get again, it was enough to go to the first place. Then it was avalanche. So they tell you where to go. Go there, go there, go there. You are like a sheep already. So then you apply here, they show you some list. This is probably suitable, all these trainings and other startups which you start meeting. But what is enough is to go to the first place. At EPFL, it was the Innovation Park. At CERN, I guess, is the Technology Transfer Office, or you should say.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
fund it, and then again, you get navigated.
Yeah,
Really.
brilliant. So the other part was, I mean, I've got two questions. Okay, there's another one coming in, but I'll ask the question. So the one that you said, which was, you went and asked your professor, your previous boss, to say, hey, look, can you put 100,000 Swiss francs to my company? Of course, he believed in you and put the money in. But was that a hesitation? Did you think like, what if, I've got a professional relationship? Did you hesitate, or how did you handle that part of, asking somebody to invest in a high risk startup?
No, it was rather opposite because uh, she was retiring at the time as well, and we actually did a project that that could be together. There could be startup. It was her interest, but I had a different idea for the startup. So at the end, instead of doing that startup, which she wanted to lead, she kind of joined my startup in that.
Brilliant. Yeah, brilliant. Well, sometimes you can't plan things, it happens. Yeah. So next question, how can you use augmented reality like yours in an online collaboration and or coaching startup?
Yes. Well, I think the first would be really that instead of having a Zoom with this kind of patchwork of tiles of images, you could sit by the table and see the image of the person or hologram of the person right in front of you. There's a lot of companies which do this 3D acquisition of the body, like Inverse in Geneva are really good in that. And it's already compatible with online, streaming. That is a very, very efficient. So yeah, I would imagine you can really sit like by the table and see people more realistically. Maybe more importantly, when you speak about some device or design, you can visualize it in front of you.
Awesome. Last question. I think we got a couple of more minutes. So you talked about the sorry, I was just doing two things and I can't do that. Talked about the venture leaders program, right? So where you went with the top 10 startups and all of them had prototypes of massive teams, and some got acquired on the way. And you said you were still working on your garage at that time. Did you feel, how was your mental state to say, do I fit in with the other nine? Am I being the imposter? Just to think about how you handled it, because everybody else was different to you.
Yeah, no, they were not all in advanced stage. There were some, for example, which didn't succeed last year and 2 years ago. So that's why actually they were part of venture leaders later. But there are maybe 3 startups out of the 10 which were in a very early stage. And you don't hide it. It's not like we were showing we have something more than we have. No, I was actually very open about this is the state we are in, and they like it. That's not like, you can see that but this was maybe a problem with some investors that startups are in different stage.
Mhm.
So someone just imagine you in a later stage. Okay, no, I'm in the earlier stage,
Exactly.
or vice versa. So we can be completely different company next year.
Mhm. Awesome. Now, last question, because there's nothing else, was so you mentioned CES twice. Um, for me, I always feel like, you're going to an event where everybody that you want to talk to is at one place, right?
Yes.
How important was it to be present and increase that level of luck by being present at CES?
Yeah, for us it's a number one event, or was number one event always, because we are doing display which you cannot show online. To show the experience, we have to bring the hardware, and really at CES you meet all of them. So really people from all planet come. Or I mean, initially not many people knew about us, so we had to do some work around to either funnel people to us,
Mhm.
but a lot happened really automatically. So then really the lines of display technology scouts were started coming. And there are then other more specialized events, uh, more new, but that's maybe not so important. It's SPIE, AR, VR, MR, where all the big companies come at like February, March.
Okay. Look, Thomas, I think I don't want to take any more of time. It's 5 o'clock. I know a startup CEO, you've got many things you're juggling, but you took an hour to talk with us. For that, we are really, really thankful. Really appreciate the time. Wish you the best, and hopefully, next time we'll use one of Serial's glasses and talk. I'm really looking forward to try.
Thank you very much. Really happy to contribute.
All right, thanks, mate.